All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Historic Commission meeting Monday, June 20th. As a reminder, we've been saying this the past couple of months, meetings, there's a new live stream format, so it's being live streamed and recorded. Anybody who's watching online, the chat isn't being monitored and it's not part of the public comment. If there are folks here that have public comment, we'll ask you to come up to the microphone when we request it and state your name and your address, and keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes. So, and for everybody up here, the microphones can be turned on and off when you want to use them. That's housekeeping, so we'll go to the first item on the minutes today, which is the approval of the minutes from the May 16th meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Item number 2 on the agenda tonight, 39 North Sherman Street. If the applicant or applicants like to come forward to the table up here. Just a reminder to the commission here, we are reviewing the proposal, even though there's some photos where it has started work, we're reviewing the proposal that's before us, so the drawings, etc. So I will actually, Suzanne, do you want to provide an overview of your comments before we get started? Is your mic on?
Okay,
There we go.
wasn't close enough. My review was appropriate with conditions that I noted the proposal creates additional living space by building over the flat roof of an existing garage, and that the addition will remain subordinate to the historic house through use of a shallower pitch and lower roof ridge than the house's roof line. I noticed that the commission should determine if vertical board and batten siding is an appropriate contemporary material on a modern addition to a historic alley house. And this review references standard number 9 and the design standards.
Okay, thank you. If you want to introduce yourself and then just go through the project and explain what you want to get approved tonight. Yeah.
My name is Dan.
Yeah, if you press the power button, the red light should turn on.
Okay, check.
There you go.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Dan Zecker. I own Awaken Properties. We do a lot of work in the city. We've probably done 30 to 40 rehabs in Lancaster City. I grew up in Lancaster. John's helped me with a lot of them, and I'm a big fan of Lancaster. I wanted to first start off apologizing for kind of how I got here. As you mentioned, the project was already started, and on that basis, I just wanted to clarify, this wasn't a addition that we were trying to throw on and hope nobody noticed. We actually had a permit turned into John. I have 6 project managers on our team. We had a permit. We actually had one issued, and we applied for a second for the addition. We actually thought it was approved, and 2 or 3 months later, by the time Suzanne emailed me, John and I were going back and forth, and I'm saying, hey, you can't shut this down. I have a permit. It took us like a week or so to figure this out, and he said, well, you have one permit. You don't have a permit for an addition. So that's how we got here. We're still trying to figure out what crossed up, but I hope John can kind of confirm. We get a permit on every project we do. We do about one a month in the city, and really like renovating houses. So this addition, this property was condemned, and it started off very ugly. That where that garage is that you're seeing on the picture had just a flat roof, and it looked like a garage that they closed in and had some ugly bay windows. It was a very ugly, dilapidated property, which is why the city condemned it, and our job is restoring it. We actually have a buyer for this. Yes, thank you. That's perfect. The windows are gone there. There were some ugly bay windows. This almost looks like, is this after we started working on it, Suzanne?
It's Google.
Okay, there you go.
There it is,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's yeah, it was pretty ugly, which is why I think you guys were ready to take it. But anyway, we have a nice buyer for it now, and it's going to look great. But I think I kind of need your help here to wrap it up, and I hope you like what we're doing. Otherwise, yeah, my wife's going to kill me because we started it already. So that's where we're at. Let me know what you need from me.
So what are the final materials around the building?
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is we're obviously the framing and all is to code. It's, lumber on the interior, everything will be in code on the inside. The outside, which is what you guys care most about, we're going to match the main house there. So main house, as I talked to Suzanne, already has vinyl windows, which we're matching the same type. We're matching the same type of gutter, which I think they did have a K gutter if I recall correctly. It's an asphalt shingle roof, which the main house has. The main house is wrapped as far as the windows, so that would occur as well. And then you can see, I think the controversial items, the board and batten siding, which is the vertical vinyl siding. And I think if that's a deal breaker, I think the buyer would be happy with like a stucco or something that you guys want. I don't do a lot of additions, which is probably why we got here to begin with, but open to whatever you need. I think we want it to look good. They want it to look good. And that's the plan we have so far.
Well, I think looking at some of the other houses in the neighborhood, I mean, there is vinyl siding in the neighborhood. The two properties that I noticed but it was a more traditional, 4-inch or 5-inch clapboard siding, which is more in keeping, I think, with the residential construction. Rather than, I think Suzanne's mention was it more, it's the board and batten siding is less typical in the city. It's more for kind of agricultural buildings, farm buildings. So I wouldn't have an issue with vinyl siding if it were, kind of a more traditional residential clapboard style or, German siding, something like that. But otherwise, I think the addition meets the standards.
Mm-hmm.
To be clear, do you like kind of that look, that vertical to kind of break up, or
No, I'm talking about a horizontal siding.
horizontal bead and batten with with like a beaded horizontal?
Well, just a traditional clapboard.
Lap siding?
Lap siding, yeah. I mean, there are several styles that, I don't know if are we able to pull up neighborhood photos?
There was
But I
one.
know there's a property across the street that has a rear shed that has horizontal lap siding on it.
Okay.
There's another house, I think, Christopher has it on his screen.
At 30, 32. I guess
Double
across the
house that's
street.
all lap siding.
Is that the 2-unit 3032?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's blue.
Okay, so like a standard.
It's
Almost
correct. That's what
Standard-
you're,
Yeah, standard 4-inch or 6-inch, lap siding.
yeah, that's it, Suzanne.
Like that.
Right, yeah.
And that would just be on the upper floor from what your
Yeah.
sketch was showing
So
before.
the first floor is stucco.
Yep,
And that's gonna
nice looking
remain. Yeah,
stucco,
that's
yep.
fine, yeah.
I did have a question. In your sketch, you show almost like carriage house doors. And in the submission, you sent like regular garage doors. I just was curious which you were using.
Yeah, for the sake of cost and like availability, we wanted to go with standard steel almost.
Okay.
I really like that look, but it's like really hard. We'd be waiting a while.
Right. Okay, I was just curious since they were different.
Yeah, no, thank you. Okay, yeah, that almost looks
Yeah.
like 6-inch, which looks a little wider.
Yeah.
I like that.
Judging from the peeling paint, that might actually be wood German siding.
Can I ask a quick question? The sketch also has a door on the side towards the rear. Is that also in the plan? Because I don't see it in the photo of the work in progress.
So we cut it. So I don't know where we're gonna put it yet because we're waiting on you guys to sign off. I know there's 2 additional parking spots right where that door is, so that would make a lot of sense. There's 2 off-street parking spots then in addition to this garage and this, and then they have a rear yard as well, so there's a lot of space on this property. So if you're okay with that, either the side or the back would be awesome to have.
Oh, there, yeah.
Are you planning on having that little awning over it?
They might have gotten a little, I'm not sure, so I'm open to what you say. Less is more to me, so feel free to say we can't do it.
And the color?
That'd be white, so, and then
It's all
all the
white?
stuff is white, so it's the window will be black wrapped, which matches the main house, and
Yeah.
should be pretty classy, plain looking.
Anyone else? Does anybody want to make a motion with maybe
Take a shot at it.
stipulations?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend the City Council approve a certificate of appropriateness for construction with conditions to address SR number 9 and the design standards on the condition that the applicant obtain zoning approval.
Is there a second?
Well, I think
Yeah.
we haven't resolved the issue of the siding.
Yeah, does anybody want to comment?
Yeah.
You would amend it to add a stipulation to the horizontal siding rather than vertical?
In lieu of the proposed board and batten.
Okay, yes, you want to start again?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm saying the wording on that should be then what? Condition and, hold on just a second. What would the wording on that then? To include.
To include horizontal lap siding in lieu of the vertical siding proposed.
Okay.
Per the discussion.
All right. Let's try this again. Mr. Chairman, I recommend the City Council approve a certificate of appropriateness for new construction with the following conditions to address the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9 and the design standards on the condition that the applicant obtain zoning approval and to include horizontal lap siding in lieu of the vertical siding proposed as per our discussion.
Second.
Okay, before, I've got this out of order. Does anybody have any public comment?
And Dan, before they vote, are you accepting those 2 conditions? You're
Yeah.
okay with that? Okay.
Yeah, I think we'd be happy to do that. I don't know if it saves time. Jamil did sign off. He said he approved this, because I think it was going to John's way. I don't know if that checks the box or if you still need something, but happy to do what you guys need.
Yeah, we can leave it as stated, and if you're complying, then you're good. Then,
Okay.
all right, so I heard a second. Any comment? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Is that with John to City Council? Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate the work you've been doing. There's a lot of nice work on your website, so
Thank you, appreciate it. It's getting harder, but
it's nice to fix up things in the city, so.
it's cool to watch. Thank you, guys.
All right, next item number 3, 223 North Water Street. And Suzanne, while they're setting up, do you want to give an overview of your review then?
This is for the addition to PCAD, or the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design, on the Water Street elevation, and it's to construct a new frame 3rd floor level above a 2-story brick structure and then a recessed 4th story. and an expanded stair tower. In my review is appropriate. The proposed third-story addition with a recessed new fourth story allows the building to remain lower than the historic tobacco warehouse to the north. The proposed enlarged facade has an unadorned utilitarian appearance, but the stuccoed wall surface is to be painted as part of a student art project. I concluded the modest enlargement to repurpose the building is appropriate along this streetscape, and this review references standards 9 and the design standards.
All right, thank you. If you want to introduce yourself and then go through the project, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, is this still on?
If the red light's on, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
My name's Eldon Stolzfus. I'm the architect. I have with me Michael Molla. He's the president of the college. And we're here to present what we intend to do for that, to that building, as well as any other questions that come up. So basically when we do, he hooks up. She had taken that. Basically, the building is going to be adaptively reused for student housing on the north side and on the south side. The areas that were previously the communion clubs present, or their studio areas, those are going to be used for classroom space. There will be one small commercial space on Prince Street. The facade in question today is the Water Street facade. What was previously a roof deck, we're building that up and adding another accessible unit in that area. The stair tower will be raised up so that they can have access to the roof. And then there'll be a small passageway on that fourth floor to get over to the student area. So we have we have one accessible means of egress and two means of egress out of the fourth floor area. The addition is 11 feet high. It actually, if we look at some of the photographs of the existing, if you can scroll to those, what was the roof deck actually stood about 8 feet above the existing floor surface. Go to the photos. So on the right-hand side, you can see that there's a tricolored fence there that goes up. That was part of the roof deck. And then the rooftop equipment was on the left-hand side. There was no screen for that rooftop equipment. Prior to me taking this photo, that fence actually went up another 4 feet. During demo, they had cut that fence down. Also, we're adjacent to the existing property beside us to the right has a tall stair tower or elevator shaft. I'm not sure what is in that, but that extends up past our current roof line. The new third floor addition will be type 2B construction, meaning the exterior wall will be 2-hour rated. There will be new windows there, more residential style windows. We're also replacing the windows on the second floor. They're currently glass block. So we intend to infill the opening that's no longer going to be window and put more residential style windows in there. The finish we're intending to use is a stucco finish, but it will be a surface that doesn't allow moisture to seep in. So the final finish, we still have to work with the contractor on that. But we would like to give the college a surface where they could use it for artwork, and we'd like to sort of team up with the Water Street. They already have I forget what it's called, but they do have something in place where they're asking for art projects along that corridor, so we'd like to participate in that. The question came up about the stair tower. You can see from this model and from some photographs that I've taken that stair tower is actually going to be fairly well hidden. If you go to the last photo. I took an additional photo that you don't have. But that photo shows that that tower extends up in front of our stair tower, and that stair tower will pretty much be hidden from the street except from this angle. When the new addition goes up, it'll go about to the top of where the stair tower is now. And the stair tower actually moves in behind the adjacent tower and goes up one more story.
Okay, so this tall gray tower, that's on the neighboring property?
That's
Okay.
correct, on the adjacent property.
Okay.
The only comment we got from Suzanne was that we were asking for the finish on the stair tower. And I guess I brought some extra photos and images along to show that really is recessed. I don't think we're going to ask the art students to work up on that fourth floor. We'll just finish that. Maybe it can be a little bit of a darker color so it recedes more from the facade of the building. But yeah, we'd like to just keep that a stucco finish as well. I don't think we need to change from another material to something else just to get that facade finished. Sorry. So this image shows about where the stair tower is going to be relative to that taller tower next door. And I'm standing now at about 16 or 18 feet above the floor in order to even see it. If I was down at eye level, it would be hard to see that.
That's it.
We were going to bring the Lumion along so we could show that, but we didn't have it loaded in our computer, and that would have taken a couple days, so we didn't do that. So I'm open to any questions, any comments?
Thank you. Thoughts?
Just a point of clarification, we're reviewing tonight just the addition on the Water Street side, not any proposed alteration to the Prince Street. What's that? I don't know who that is, getting the feedback. Okay.
Are we okay?
Can I ask a question? Yeah. Okay. So I have a question for you about the fenestration, just the proportions of what we're looking at here versus the original building, which had the larger windows that were more balanced. I just wonder if anybody has any thoughts about the new proposal with the smaller windows, and then on the side, how they're not evenly placed on the, I guess is that the second floor where they're three, but they're not evenly spaced? And I just wonder what the thinking is behind that, and if others have a comment about the proportionality versus the original.
Right, the lower windows that he just had highlighted are existing, and we were going to keep those. I think they're glass block, if I remember. The other windows, we made them the same height as the existing opening so that we didn't have to change the existing header on the existing building. And then and also that floor is lower, so it does look like they're smaller, but they're not much smaller than the ones on the brick building. They're a little bit more narrow, but not much. We were also having some problems with the plan layout to make the windows. If we made them much bigger, there would have been problems with the plan layout that we had. Can you go to the elevation? The lower ones on that facade.
Yeah, they do look small in the front.
Here you can see better what the proportion, we actually proportioned the window to the size of the windows on the second floor, but just made it not quite as tall and not quite as wide.
Yeah, I think that's fine if they're
Yeah.
shorter. I think the question maybe you're stating is that they seem lost there.
Yeah, I don't really have an issue with the smaller windows. I mean, they're kind of in keeping with the size of with the fenestration on the larger building, but it is a secondary building. It's kind of smaller, subservient to the larger building. And I think the smaller windows kind of furthers your goals of possibly, painting a mural on the building, which requires wall surface.
I'm talking about the ponds.
Yeah, I don't,
To the new addition.
small windows aren't a deal breaker for me.
Question on the side also, when you said there's two on the side or three on the second floor and two, there's a reason because of a wall or that's impeding another window there on the north unit, level 2.
Yeah, those are actually glass block windows that are remaining. They're
Right, but
existing.
the next floor up, there's 2 instead of 3. I think that was your other question.
Yeah,
Is that
was-
just due to wall placement inside?
That's due to the plan, yeah, there's 2 bedrooms facing that side. We sort of placed those windows that what work best in the bedrooms.
Hey, Eldon, are you going to be removing the PP&L pole with the transformers on right in front of the building right now?
I don't know that we can take out the pole, but we are going to try to get rid of the transformers. We're
Okay.
trying to hook up across the street on this.
Yeah, the transformers and that high voltage line will probably need removed because of the proximity to the new addition that you're bringing out there and the windows that you want to put in.
Not only that, I can't get anyone to work on the building.
Okay, yeah,
would love your recommendation.
all right.
Just keep calling.
That's what
That's
we're
the
doing.
only advice you can give.
What other comments or questions from the commission?
Did you bring any material samples or just that you're using stucco?
Yeah, we're working with a contractor to get the final product. We're not sure exactly what it is, but it's going to probably be a stucco product that has a finish that doesn't allow moisture to get into it. So there's different manufacturers' names for that product. I'm sorry, I can't remember at this point.
So you're saying it's keeping the moisture out, it doesn't have like a drainage plane behind?
Well, no, the final
Because the
finish.
existing is,
I'm sorry, the final finish will be sort of a painted finish, but it's something that they'll be able to do their artwork on.
okay.
So we're still working on exactly what that final finish
Sure.
is. As far as the color right now, we'd like to not match the dirt, but match the color of the stucco below. It's kind of a nondescript, a buff color. We'd like to stay with that if at all possible.
But the existing building it's a Portland cement-based stucco, and the upper floor will be something similar. You're not proposing a exterior insulation, a finish system?
No.
Kind of rain screen kind of
No.
thing? Okay.
You're going to
It'll
go,
be a cement stucco.
okay. Are you going to go over the lower levels with the same finish, so it's all uniform all the way?
We hope to, yeah. We
Yeah.
hope to just, I know it needs some patching. We have some different openings and things, so we'd like to have a whole complete
Final
final
recoating?
finish on the whole surface.
Okay,
Again,
that'll
it
be good.
gives, even our model, we're having a hard time making it look real monolithic because the model builds it in stages. So it's going to be a final finish, a new finish that kind of is the outer surface of the whole addition.
But the third floor addition is going, you said it'll be, because the building, the construction type, it's going to be fire rated 2-hour, but is it 2-hour wood frame? Or is it masonry, or?
The rest of the building is wood frame. If, it kind of depends on what the contractor can get his hands on. I'd like him to use steel studs if he can.
Okay. But it's not going to be masonry?
No. And
Okay.
we're going to use, it'll be 2 layers of fire-rated drywall on each side of whatever
Okay.
the studs are. So
Okay,
it's a very sturdy
okay.
surface to give us.
So there will be some kind of control joint at where the material changes?
There will have to be. We're going to try to minimize that as
Yeah.
much as possible.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other concerns? Any comments questions from the public?
Just a point of clarification.
Yes.
In one of the drawings, I noticed there's like a porch built out. Was that, and I didn't notice it in the rendering, I just didn't know if that was going. Oh, no,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
there's one of the drawings I'm looking at,
I think this is the Prince Street.
oh, this is Prince Street side, and we're not reviewing that one?
We're not reviewing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Be glad to show it to you, but
No, it's fine. That's all.
If there aren't any public comments, is there a motion from somebody? Yeah, if you want to get up to the mic, and I don't know if it's on, you want to introduce yourself and where you live? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mimi Shapiro, and I live at 239 North Concord Street. If this is student housing, do these mini apartments or bedrooms or whatever they're called have access to get out in case of an emergency, and about how many apartments will there be? Or bedrooms or whatever, I don't
Okay.
know what we're calling them.
It basically is a dormitory.
Right,
I mean, it's a suite of 2 rooms with a shared bathroom.
okay.
So
Like they have in all
it's-
schools
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious.
It looks like you obviously have 2 means of egress, and it exits to 2 different locations on here.
Yeah, one of the reasons we're adding to the stair towers to make sure we have 2 means of egress out of that upper floor.
The top floor.
So, and then the elevator also creates accessibility to all the floors, which we sort of had with the old elevator, but it wasn't really accessible.
Looks like, according to the plan here, you have 55 beds or students
Correct.
in there.
5 beds.
Okay.
And clearly, the life safety systems are paramount for us, considering the location as well as the safety of students.
Well, is there a motion to approve?
Anybody? Can I borrow your?
You got it there.
Okay, yeah, let's see. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I recommend that City Council approve a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed new construction at 223 North Water Street to construct a new frame, 3rd-story level above a 2-story brick structure facing North Water Street and extend an existing stair tower to a new recessed 4th-floor level per the submitted plans and proposed building materials. This work meets the Secretary of Interior Standards Numbers 9 and the design standards.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes.
Okay, Eldon, their recommendation is just that, a recommendation. It has to go on to city council for a final vote, which will happen on July 12th, but I will send you in writing the date and time.
Thank you.
Good evening, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, 118 North Prince Street. So this is a conceptual discussion, so Suzanne does not have a review. So if the applicant or applicants can set up and then introduce yourself and introduce the project. Modern technology, yeah. Yeah, I think until he powers up there. It's 3 laptops and 20 cords. There we go. He did, yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready. My name's Charles Alexander, the architect, here to represent the development group and the project team for this project. As Suzanne said, this is a conceptual discussion. This is a project that actually 1 block south of where we were just talking. Stretches between Prince Street and Water Street. It's an existing surface parking lot as well as a 3-story brick retail building with some additions in the back and a one-story garage on Water Street. This is an aerial, it sits basically across from the Prince Street garage. Here's just some more photos. It's located sort of in the gallery area. It's sort of the missing tooth in a pretty nice block that runs along the west side of Prince Street. Obviously, on the east side, you have some surface parking lots, bigger buildings, historic house, as well as the Prince Street parking garage. Photos on the left, you're looking at the Water Street side. In the middle one, Water Street looking back up, looking down Water Street, the site is to the left. And then you have, again, just to the lower right, sort of an aerial looking at the Water Street side of the site. The proposal is for a mixed-use building that stretches from Prince to Water Street. We're proposing retaining the three-story front section of the historic building, building on the parking lot. And then there's an existing, between the building to the south of the historic structure, there's currently some space that's being used for a lot of outdoor activities, those kinds of things. We want to maintain that, and it becomes a public sort of access way that brings you through from Prince Street to Water Street. It acts as a sort of muse, and it allows us then to have our residential entry located off of that muse between the two streets. There's about 6 feet of fall across the site. We take advantage of that to get some pretty high ceilinged retail space on Prince Street to kind of continue that sort of theme of galleries and retail that come all the way along Prince. But we also see Water Street as a pretty active street now as well. So we also have retail on Water Street. Again, why the residential lobby then is tucked in the middle. And then basically above the retail would be market rate residential apartments. This plan right here sort of shows you the what we would call the Water Street sort of elevation. So coming in from Water Street's on the left. So you have retail space there, as well as this is where electric's coming in because of the power that runs down Water Street. Bike room, lobby, parcel, leasing office, those kinds of kind of functional elements that are off of the lobby. Then coming up to the Prince Street level, now you have retail along Prince Street, including the historic structure that we're retaining. You have sort of a mezzanine level up above the lobby that looks out over the lobby. So the lobby itself is basically a 2-story space. And then over top of the Water Street retail, we have our first level of residential. So it's a partial level that's basically just on the backside. I do have a section, so it becomes a little bit more understandable as we go. This would be a typical floor right here. Basically, the building is made up of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and then duplex units. You can see the historic building starts to, drop off in that area. It's only a 3-story structure. And then to step the building back, the top 2 levels of the building are actually duplexes. So they're like, we call them sky towns. So essentially the stair towers and elevators only go to the second to last floor, and the units themselves are 2-story units. This allows us to have really beautiful terraces for all of these units where we step back, pull back from the street facades for those upper 2 floors. So these units kind of open out onto what would be the roof of the lower section of the building. Here's a section cut through from Water to Prince. So you can see the how we deal with the falling grade from one side to the other. You can see how we're able to get the kind of more grand retail space along Prince Street. And then you can see the duplex floor, how it steps back at the upper level. These are just some really quick sort of precedent images. There's a lot of beautiful materials to be found on the adjacent buildings. Obviously, brick is the predominant material in Lancaster, particularly along Prince Street. But there's a lot of mansard roofs on the adjacent buildings, so we've made some really nice use of slate shingles for kind of creating that kind of upper story, the step back, creating a contrast to the masonry. So we kind of see sort of breaking this building into some sort of vertical massing. So some of these precedents sort of show how, we can sort of bring some of this scale back to the street. Again, just some more images. Again, also showing some of the kind of internal mews, the kind of beautiful little quiet courtyards that kind of cut through blocks. And that's something that in our meetings with planning, people are pretty excited about having that cut through and connecting Prince to water. This is an elevation cut through that kind of walking mews area with the sort of lobby at the sort of first two floors in the center. Then you have the brick of the historic building on the Prince Street side, and then we're also reintroducing that brick on the Water Street side. And then you can see how it kind of peels back to that upper story, which is all the slate shingle kind of set back. This is Prince Street side right here. So we pulled setbacks and sort of recessed balconies where we attached to the historic structure, created kind of a hyphen between the new and the old to allow it to kind of, still have its sort of sense of independence. The same thing on the north side as well to the adjacent structure. The entry to retail is that recessed area on the north side. And then the rest of the building, it's sort of shown in shadow because it's pretty far set back from the Prince Street facade as it steps back. This is the Water Street side. So again, we break it down scale-wise with, again, sort of hyphen on the north side as well as one that kind of separates the brick from the panel material. And again, the kind of inner layer is the slate. Side elevations, this is an area that's already been identified for artistic creativity. These are our party wall locations. Again, we tried to highly articulate it so we don't end up with a big giant blank facade, but recessed it so we can fit the windows in, cut reveals. No one would ever see this elevation, obviously, because you're in the middle of the block. But it was just important for you to see how we're doing the materiality. This is just a quick vignette, massing-wise from Water Street. This is looking north on Water, so you can see again how the massing steps back and the sort of slate sits as the kind of inner box. There is you can kind of see also this in the Muse side, the stepping down. We've done this in a number of our projects where we create a public sort of terrace and lounge space at the upper floor so that, even if someone has a one bedroom on the Water Street side on the first floor, they have the ability to kind of go up and occupy the upper levels just like the duplexes with their terraces as well. This is a view showing the building from across Prince Street. We modeled as best we could the buildings along Prince, just so you get a sense of their scale. And again, I think we really tie into that kind of slate shingle look where you have all the mansards that, kind of come in to the upper floors of the Prince Street buildings. We're doing everything we can. There's a beautiful tree. We're working with the Shade Tree Commission. We hope to preserve it. It's probably the largest tree on Prince. We have no idea what its root system is, but we have an arborist looking at it right now. And then this is sort of our final view here, and this is showing where the Muse kind of cuts through. You can see landscaping that would kind of tie you through. There's a porch-like structure on the adjacent building to the south. We have a little porch-like structure that kind of matches it, that creates kind of covered walk to the entry to the residential lobby. And I think here you get a real sense of the three-dimensionality of how the building really pushes back from Prince Street, and how the balconies create the sort of separations of the massing. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. So it's a conceptual discussion, so any comments or questions that would be helpful for when they make edits to return?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So could you explain what's happening to the old building? I was a little confused because in the drawings, it looked to me like it might be used for storage, but then you mentioned just keeping
Yeah,
the
so
facade.
thank-
So what's the?
Thank you for
actual
asking
use?
that question. Yes. So the first floor, so the only thing we showed as the storage is there's an English basement that's under there. So that would be basically adjunct space for the retail user. So we are connecting in, there's stairs up into that space, which works out perfectly with the fall of Prince Street. So we have our accessible entrance at the other side into that retail, but basically it's all united into a single retail space on the first floor. The second and third floors are our fitness center. So it's basically fitness on the kind of piano noble floor, with then a sort of yoga loft on the third floor. And then the roof is our dog park, because we have to restructure it anyway for fire ratings. So we've done this on a number of our projects, is create a quick spot to run out in your bathrobe with your dog in the middle of the night. And it's a great amenity. People love it.
So that would involve demolition and rebuilding it? That's
No,
my question.
not-
Are you using
no.
the existing building?
No, it's
Is it
all
in
the
good shape?
All the existing, the front section's in pretty good shape. The roof has to be rebuilt.
Okay.
It's like 2x4
Yeah.
construction. It's not substantial,
Right.
but everything stays. The parapet becomes our balcony railing, the cornices, everything stays the same. And it's, basically a preservation, restoration project.
I have two more small comments. One is just this is my opinion, I work in sustainability, so I would just encourage you to think about green roof space, things like this, if it's not in your plan
Have you
already.
read your new regulations for stormwater? We're going to have green
Yeah.
roof over every square inch of it.
Okay, and the other thing is my taste. I think we're seeing a lot of this color scheme, the red, the dark gray, and the white, and I would encourage you to think more creatively.
Sure.
But different shades. To me, and what I see, the gray looks really oppressive and heavy. I understand the connection of wanting to connect to rooftop colors, but it looks different up there than it does on my screen, so I would just encourage you to lighten it up and think about different approaches.
Okay, yeah, sure, thank you.
Alex, were you gonna?
I was going to try to piggyback on the old building comment and whether a demo was involved. Did you mention the portion off of the back of the property on Water Street? Would that be demoed a bit?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That was, it's not that old of a structure. They kind of tried to make it look older than it really is. It's a one-story garage.
No horses were,
No, this is not a.
The three arches
Yeah,
building?
yeah, that's a fairly recent creation.
Also on the older building, in your one drawing, it looked like the windows were staying the same, but then on the courtyard entrance, the windows are different and the entrance is different. What are you proposing?
Well, no, the historic structure is staying the same. There is.
Right, but
there
these
is no
windows
side
aren't what's there.
entrance. I'm sorry?
These windows are not what's there. That's what my question is.
Oh, well, then they might not be modeled correctly, but the bay window and the windows that are on the side are intended to remain as they are.
Okay, but the front windows also?
Yes,
Okay.
everything is a restoration of that building.
Okay.
I don't know what the construction date is of the little one-story building in the back. But if it's at least 50 years old, it's to be considered as a historic building. And its relative young age doesn't negate its architectural value. I will say that, this is the second proposal that's come before this commission for this site. A few years ago, we had a proposal for a hotel It was very similar. It was going to retain the front portion of the historic, the Neo-Georgian building, and then build on the parking lot. One of the conditions for approval that the Historical Commission set for that proposal was for retention of that one-story building on the Water Street side. It's part of the streetscape. It can't just be tossed aside. Did you give any consideration to retaining that portion, at least the facade of it?
I mean, I was instructed and informed that it was a fairly recent structure by the owner as well as the contractor who brought us to the project. So I can't answer you relative to, my understanding.
But you don't know
of
what they meant by
It's,
recent?
yeah, it's like 1940s, but something from 1970 could be considered historic.
Okay,
And
well,
it was remodeled in the 80s, so it's, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it qualifies as historic, and it's a sweet little building. I don't think we should just
well, it
haphazardly
completely,
just say tear it down because it's not 19th century.
yeah, well, it
No.
would completely preclude the cut through then. I mean, that would have to go away, because it would block that, the connection through. It occupies the property line, on the Water Street side.
Does it, or does the,
Now, the neighboring building has the gap where the fire stairs are. I don't have Google Earth here.
but there's also a little garage next to it, just a
Right,
little
that's on the
frame
neighboring
garage.
that's the neighboring
Okay.
property.
Yeah, one of the arches would have to be part of the pedestrian
Well, I mean,
walkway.
honestly,
Yeah, I mean-
if you could maintain the,
Yeah,
maintain it as
I don't
a
object,
wall.
I don't object one
Yeah.
bit to, again, this is news to me that it
Yeah.
would be considered. So, obviously, they wanted me to tear down the three-story building, and I'm like, no. And they're like, well, you don't have the density. And I'm like, well, I'll find
Yeah.
it. And we were able to. So, yeah, I mean, retaining, that along the facade and integrating that in, I don't think would be a
Yeah.
problem at all. I mean, that's,
because
that's,
I think the functions you have for that, that corner of the property, it's a trash room, it's, you need a large opening, so
no, and I
you've
think
got
the
a
archway
ready-
would be a fun way to
you've
pass
got
through.
ready-built openings.
Yeah, I mean, as long as that aligns, I think the archway could be
Yeah, it's
used.
to be right there.
Yeah, I would really encourage you to consider keeping that, at least the facade.
Okay.
Of that little building. My only other concern is that this project really looms over the other, the neighboring buildings. It's as tall as the parking garage.
Mhm.
You mentioned about the owner, the developer wanting density, and I assume density only comes from
So,
height.
yeah, I mean, so we do a lot of multifamily infill projects, and, the problem you always run into in these this is a small apartment project. I mean, it really is, in the grand scheme of things. And, your fixed costs have to be distributed across your unit count. It's just the only way that it works. And, so we ran the numbers, on this, and it's a squeeze as it is. There's definitely, there were some questions about, creating two pass-throughs, one on both sides of the building. And, we looked at it briefly, but we lost, 6 units, and it just doesn't work. So, right now, it's even harder. We're hoping some sanity comes back to the construction market. But, it's a delicate dance.
Yeah.
And, in this particular case, it's making it at the current, unit mix. But, there's a fair amount of money, being, I don't want to say lost, but by preserving the three-story structure, it takes a big corner out of the site.
Could you scroll back to the section?
Mhm.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, go forward, because there was one image there. Okay, so it's basically, the height is really basically the height of the parking garage, of the height of the setback
Of the setback piece
is,
yes.
is basically on par with the height of the parking
Right,
garage.
the
So-
terrace level is not. The
Yeah.
terrace level is 2 floors shorter.
Below that, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, we've looked at a lot of projects of about this size, this height and bulk, in various parts of the city. In the other cases, the adjoining properties were other tall buildings. This is really the first one that's come before us, or one of the first, an 8-story building that's come before us that has 2- and 3-story neighbors.
Yeah.
So it's a bit out of, it's a bit jarring to look at that, Prince Street elevation.
Yeah, the block we're in, I would concur, but there's a lot of variety to the scales of building up and down Prince Street. There really is. And, you go a block north and you get bigger, massive buildings, and you go south, you got bigger, massive buildings with, the theater, and then further south. So,
Yeah.
it is, it's close to the heart of the city, and it's a great place to be. And, I think the developer's very excited, about creating a super high-quality residential experience, in the heart of the city.
And I think the reality is of, kind of the demand in the market in the city is that any piece of vacant land is going to have a high-rise on it. Nobody's going to build a 2- or 3-story building and see a return on their investment.
It's,
In the downtown.
it's what, it's what happens in cities,
Yeah.
When, they become, they start to get the energy that you're getting in Lancaster, and you're getting the restaurants, and the, people want to be there. And, to be there, it has to pencil out, or otherwise it doesn't happen. It stays a parking lot.
But I think to Elizabeth's comment about kind of the dark color of the recessed portion, that may be exacerbating the kind of looming tower, character of the proposal.
Yeah, this is a very preliminary presentation to you, and, we're here to listen to your feedback. Material-wise, we're incredibly flexible. I'm happy to hear that, we want to see something, lighter and different.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that's
I'm
fine.
anxious to see it come back as a formal proposal, to see more details. Because, kind of the kind of schematic elevations you've shown right now are really just kind of punched openings in a plane. There's not really any kind of articulation of the materials of the brick, and, and it really,
Yeah.
the devil's
we're
in the details.
we're in concept design, so,
Right.
yes. How one details brick,
Yeah.
there's a lot of bad brick detailing.
Yeah.
Everywhere, including
But I think
in Lancaster,
this-
especially in the last 20 years. So, yeah, I think how you detail brick is, it's sky's the limit.
That 5-story brick on the Prince Street side, like there's not a cap to that. Or I was wondering, would it help if, even if it was in the same plane, if that top section turned into a different material? Because you're looking at 5 stories there. If the brick turned to something lighter, would you read that as 4 stories on the front? I don't know. That would be something to study,
Yeah.
get into it.
No,
And I think, just articulation of the
Yeah.
fact that, all of the other brick buildings on the block have some form of cornice.
Yeah.
And
Right.
this building doesn't have a top right now.
Yep.
It's just it's a mass model, basically.
Yeah. No, and we had played around with, we wanted to be really careful that we didn't do too many materials, because that just gets sloppy.
Yeah.
But, I think, again, there's so many wonderful kind of masonry products out there in terms of the scale, changing up the scale from the, kind of the more traditional brick size to some of the more interesting, they have the 1 foot by 2 inch, Roman bricks now, and then, how you use them, as flat arches over windows, and you can really do some pretty beautiful detailing, in the masonry. We just, we did feel it was pretty important to be masonry, given the the nature of the block and not try and, cheapen it, with something that,
Yeah.
we just were like, this needs to be.
The D word.
Yeah.
Drive it.
Drive it.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
you didn't mention the base also. I mean, one of the other things I think that could be articulated more is the first story and the materiality of that relative to the adjacent structures as well, because they all, there's a base, there's middle, there's a top.
Yeah.
We set back, we felt like that, because, these are flat elevations, right? I mean, you would have to obliterate the Prince Street garage to ever have this view of the building.
Right,
So,
right.
when you do step backs, things, that two-story section's really gonna only read like one, because you're never gonna see the
Mhm.
lowest level of the upper, the piece where it steps back.
But I think your point about, kind of a base, a middle, and a top,
Mhm.
that's true for kind of the downtown commercial buildings on Queen Street and King Street. This is really a residential street where the brick goes to the ground. There's no commercial storefront, on most of these buildings. So I think that's, something to,
Consider.
keep in mind when detailing, the overall facade. The facade would be different if this were on Queen Street,
Mhm.
or King Street. So, just kind of keep the detailing and the scale of the neighbors in mind.
What other comments did anybody have regarding height or, Steve, you comment on height or anything else?
I agree with the comment that was made about the storefront. I don't think that matches the streetscape on that side of the street at all. And then maybe also look at the windows going up. I thought I had read that you were going for floor to ceiling, but maybe that was something else that I read today. But,
The glass is floor to ceiling.
yeah. That's, that wouldn't be typical in the block, and I know it's an infill, but maybe at least matching at the street level, would make it flow more with the other buildings around it as you're walking down the street.
So you're saying bring the glass up with a sill. I mean, we'll have to make sure you can see in, because retail, it's,
Right.
gallery, it's really important to
Oh, yeah.
see, transparency is pretty critical.
But most of the galleries on Gallery Row are converted residential buildings. Very few of them actually have, kind of large show windows.
Which, might be good.
Did we come down on the idea of a cornice on the top to sort of bring it in line to the rest of some of the other buildings on the block?
So
Yeah.
we looked at that, it's halvesy. I'm a little reluctant to cut a building in half, just proportionally. So,
Sure.
I think there's a lot of variation up and down, and there's a building over to the right that's, the cornice is way up at the top. So I think we'd want to do what was already recommended, which is make the top story of the masonry section read differently.
Cool.
At least
Between
then
4 and 5.
proportionately, we're not putting a zipper down the middle of the
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, the cornice doesn't have to match the existing building next door. At height level.
Ask for public comment.
Yeah. Before we continue, any comments, questions from the public?
Hello, my name is Judy Zimmerman Herr. I live at Steepleview Lofts at 118 North Water Street, and many of my fellow residents are here as well. We have some concerns. You have addressed mostly the elevation questions and so on from the Prince Street side, which I understand. We obviously have concerns from the Water Street side. And the concerns are similar to what you have addressed in terms of height. This would be several stories higher than our building. It would cut off our sun and our view, and it would also make Water Street feel quite different. So I would raise questions of scale in terms of the Water Street streetscape. I would also raise questions of parking, traffic. The plan is for Water Street to become a bike corridor. That means that we're already going to be faced with challenges in relation to traffic on Water Street. I don't know where it's envisioned that all these people in these apartments put their cars, assuming they have cars. There are entrances and so on, as I saw it, as I think, although this went by quickly, in the plan on Water Street. So I would just want some consideration of those kinds of issues. Thank you.
So the Water Street side, and in the section, at least the front along the street looks similar in height. And then obviously there's the step back portion.
Correct. It does the
But
same.
it's similar.
Yeah.
Maybe by half a story, and then there's the two other stories.
Yes, so if I can address this, so the parking is in the Prince Street garage. There is no parking in this building, so there would be no vehicular access to the building. The doors that would be on the Water Street side, there's only the retail entrance. So the residential entrance is from the kind of cut through the mews that sort of connects the two blocks. So that's where the entrance is. It's not on Water Street. And the primary access would be from Prince, because you'd be coming from the parking garage if you were parking your car in the garage. So you would basically come down the Prince Street elevator and cross the street. There is conversation right now of doing a mid-block. We're working with planning right now. So, the bike lane is seen as a real positive. We have a really large bike room. That's what a lot of the newer buildings are focused on, is getting rid of cars and, being in the city and having that direct access to bike. And so we have a very large bike room as a part of the entry lobby area. We're very open to discussions on materiality and those kinds of things. We did try and step the building down and break the massing. We're appreciative always of adjacent buildings. Unfortunately, open lots, ultimately do get filled. Views are, we deal with this all the time in Baltimore with water views that are constantly getting covered up as the city fills itself in. But we want to be respectful neighbors, so we will definitely, listen and bring to you, what our thoughts are in terms of materials, and we'll look at whatever we can do to try and bring that massing down, on Water Street side. In a similar fashion to what we're discussing here on the Prince Street side as well, in terms of intermediate cornices and, changes of materials to, kind of match up. I mean, I think you're a 4-story brick structure? Yeah. Yes, it's an old warehouse building, I think, right, that was converted. Yeah, it's a beautiful building.
Any other public comments or questions?
Mimi Shapiro, 239 North Concord Street. All the buildings on that Prince Street side are 2.5 and 3 stories. They're pretty light and airy. This is going to look like a wall that goes straight up, a solid block, and infill in the middle of the block, this huge, is going to really do something to the character. And design is magical. You can make everything look great flat, but when you get in the mass construction part, it becomes that this is going to be a wall. And on the Water Street side, because we just had open streets, which was great, but when you stand in front of Steepleview Lofts, the street is very narrow and you put a few cars there, and right now it's all open, which we know it's not going to stay open. They keep calling it a, empty tooth or something. It's just so massive that I don't know how it's going to fit. I mean, I think we need, housing and more, but I think putting 8 stories next to 2.5-story houses is going to be impossible for the light, for the people who live there, for the shadows the building's going to cast. So I don't know how to resolve that. I'm not an architect, but design-wise, I think it has to fit better. And usually infill in cities does not come so big and so massive right in the middle of the block. So if you could take it down a few stories, that might help a lot. I'm not in charge of the money or the bank.
Yeah.
But I think for the neighbors and the people who live there, it has to work for everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
And the businesses that are there also, all along Gallery Row.
Mhm.
So. Anybody
Thank you.
else? I won't.
Any other comments, questions?
I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't. I have not. I know where the building to the north is facing the other direction. It's basically a party wall on our side. There are a few windows that we're respecting along the north side, and then the back portion of the building is pretty much solid brick. They face. You're talking about the building to the south? Yeah, so that one we've made a huge deal about respecting because of the porch and everything that's going on in there. That's why we've identified that as this cut-through park that becomes part of the public way. No, we're basically stepping our building back and creating a wider area than what currently exists along the side of that building. We're creating an internal court along that, so we are actually making it better than what's there, wider than what's there. And it's, as I said, it's becoming a part of the public domain. It's a connecting park that is like an interblock park that connects through from Prince to Water.
Any other questions from,
Yeah, no, I think we've heard from a lot of people concerns, and I get it. I mean, I'm not a fool. I've done a lot of projects, and, I have to solve, the problems of making it work from a financial standpoint. I think that, to back up a little, because I think, I am vaguely aware that this property's been looked at for some other uses. I think, we're the architects doing the conversion of the hospital. We're doing a lot of work in the Lancaster area now, and, we're seeing, what happens with cities is they become vibrant and they get a critical mass, and then they become, places that we really want to live. And, so I think people are always looking for where are the empty lots? Where are the empty lots in the right locations that are, close to the heart of the city, so that people can go to the galleries, they can go to the restaurants, they can go to the shows without ever having to get in a car. They just literally go downstairs. And so, I think we want to create, a building that's a good neighbor to everyone. And, we're going to listen to what everyone's suggesting here and come back with, revisions that take that into account.
so when you do come back, I guess I'm hoping the developer will come with you.
Yeah, so they're it's summertime, so.
Yeah, so
They're not in town.
whenever you come back, yeah, because
Yeah.
no matter whatever changes are made, and I'm sure there'll be follow-up questions about units and viability and cost and that sort of thing, which, I mean, you spoke to generally, but obviously they'll want to maybe chime in a little bit more concretely.
Yeah, I was surprised there weren't more questions. Obviously, we don't have any renters here. But it is, these are, geared towards a higher end market. This is an amenity driven building. You don't have a lot of buildings that have these kinds of amenities in them. we call them kind of lifestyle buildings, which is where, you move in and you have, fitness, you have the bike rooms, the dog wash, the dog park, you have the sky lounges, you have all those things that, make city living so much fun. The units vary from, some move, we definitely see move down tenants here, people who have houses, on the outskirts of the city that want to be in the city, but they need to have a full dining table and they need to, be able to put their furniture in these units. So we do have, that's, all of the duplexes are, at least 2 bedrooms, if not 2-bedroom dens.
Well, I think this is the first kind of public presentation of your concept. I'm assuming either tomorrow or the next few days, it'll be in the newspaper, and then it'll hit Facebook.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
lively discussion will ensue.
Of course.
So,
Yeah. I mean, that's what building in a city that people care about is all about.
Anybody else have any comments that might be helpful or pertinent for the return?
Yeah, the commission should summarize if there's key points or areas you really want them to look at beyond, more detailed drawings.
Yeah, I mean,
Design elements and the demolition as well.
yeah, some of the things we talked about obviously is investigating the garage in the back and incorporating that, including doing an investigation on the height and scale, and then also looking at the detailing where the cornice might be, especially for the brick facade on the Prince Street side. Looking at the materiality a little bit. In our renderings here, some of the renderings are, the gray looks good because it's lighter. Some of them are really dark, so investigating that. And obviously the detailing on these flat facades on both Prince Street and Water Street, that'll be important, including what happens at the retail level for those big glass openings or what the detailing is down there.
and I think you should be commended for proposing real slate, rather than gunmetal gray, metal siding, which is what we normally see. So I appreciate that, but there's still the issue of, because that gives it a further, kind of texture and materiality that you just don't get with metal siding. But I think the color is an issue, but, slate comes in a wide range of colors.
Yeah, we just did it on the library edition up in Harrisburg for their central library branch, and everyone keeps driving down the alley to take pictures because they're like, whoa, it looks so, the texture is so beautiful.
Yeah.
I do think the way you broke up the massing with the gray and the white as it steps back helps to reduce kind of the overall kind of weight of the whole building. So as you're looking at it, probably from street level, those views will be helpful. Like you said, this view or others are taken from as if the parking garage didn't exist. So what would it be like if you were standing on the sidewalk and looking up? Some of that gray pieces, that 7th and 8th story may completely disappear, or partially disappear visually, which would be a huge help in terms of the scale of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, in listening to what everyone's saying, I'm thinking that we might want to relocate our kind of public terrace area to one of the street elevations, because that would let us, we could go a little bit more dense, dead center of the block, height-wise, and then come down lower when we get closer to the street. So I think we can play around with that, massing-wise, and see if that will help us. Basically what I'm saying is swap out some units in the center of the block to take units away from the street.
Your public terrace is in the middle of the block.
Yeah, that's what you see on top of the white. Yeah,
lobby?
you can see the canopy and the glass, so it's like a,
Yeah.
that's up at the,
Yeah, I mean, that might be one solution, kind of lower the height of the building, at the street
well,
level.
at the very least, it would split up the upper massing, cut it in half, into smaller pieces. It sounds like we might want to do that on the Water Street side.
Yeah.
I think the views in that direction, I think, are better anyway.
Yeah, 'cause
right?
your neighbor across Prince Street is a parking garage, so
Yeah.
the views are
Well, yeah,
immaterial.
so we did it here because, anyone who's ever been up high in Lancaster, the hill, you basically get the whole mountain range,
Yeah.
or the hill range to the south is beautiful. And that was what we were really, gearing towards. But I could see us moving to the south west corner with it, along the Water Street side, maybe. So we'll
That's a good idea.
we'll play around with it and see.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Oh, yes. Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening, Commission. Douglas Smith, Chief Planner for the city. Appreciate the discussion. Just wanted to add a few additional comments, some of which I've already mentioned in the planning context letter that was included with Suzanne's review. I do think that multiple points of entry, maybe even beyond what is suggested here, could help mimic the streetscape. This is something I've brought up at a couple other meetings previously, but, Lancaster, part of the intrigue of walking around the downtown is being able to, look in multiple sort of doors and storefronts, and to have a longer building along the streetscape that has less opportunity for that sort of engagement, doesn't quite mimic the lively streetscape design that we have in the city. So it looks to me like right now there's maybe 2 points of entry on the front of the building, the teacher's building, and then maybe one further up the block. There's certainly room for another one. I know that there's there's elevation challenges there too with entry, but something for consideration. I'm noting a couple of things here that I think could actually potentially help with the integration of this building into a special place in the city, which is Gallery Row. It's certainly something that it would be great to have the project team continue to think about, ways that this project can help really fit into that cultural asset that we have in the city. And some of those, I think some of those opportunities could potentially affect the design that you propose to this commission. So door entries are one of the things. The commission brought up storefronts, which I thought was a really great comment, and wanting to see similarity between this project and the other buildings. I mentioned the opportunity for storefronts in my letter, specifically because if there were an art use of some kind in here, or something that contributed to the art community, then having the ability to look into the building, of course, is part of the intrigue, but perhaps you can strike a balance between those two. Also wanted to mention, or at least propose the idea that there could be other ways that this project helps to just further brand or solidify Gallery Row as an asset as well. Certainly there are opportunities to do that on the facade. I'll leave it to you to think of creative ways to do that, but we've chatted briefly about,
Yeah, we're talking about a light installation on the Muse,
Sure.
some kind of light art. We've been doing a lot of, with all the new LED technologies, light art's become a really, it's one, it makes things safer, and two, it's beautiful.
Indeed, yeah, could be structural or non-structural for sure. And then, of course, encouraging the development team to think about what complementary uses could occur on the ground floor, which may drive some of the size of the units or basic outfitting of the space, lighting, floor, materials, et cetera. How many units are across the floor of this, the ground floor of the building.
None.
Sorry?
There aren't any units on the ground floor.
There are no commercial units?
There are retail spaces, yes. I thought you said residential units.
No, commercial retail units, and is it one large one? Is it multiple small ones? How does that then mimic the streetscape as well of the rest of Gallery Row? Having one large commercial space wouldn't quite be fitting in this particular environment. So something to think about as you are further designing the first floor. And then as well, I wanted to mention the courtyard space, which I personally love just from a planning perspective and pedestrian access. I was kind of curious about the I don't know what to call it, like sort of awning or shed roofing portion that you have on the south side of the building. I would be interested if there are comments from the commission on that in terms of how that fits into the streetscape, but my focus is more so how that space ends up getting used and how it could be activated along that street as well for public use. If you're going to be inviting the public into that space, there could be ways that then interacts with the street on First Friday or other kinds of pop-up events. So thinking ahead about how people will actually sit and use and engage with that space, I'd be curious to hear your ideas on that. And yeah, I will leave it at that. And of course, just for the general knowledge of the room, 150 feet is permitted by right by zoning. This project is under land development, or will be under land development review in the near future. We've reviewed a sketch plan, and I think you should have the comments that our staff generated through that review process. So
Well, then, for the record, I'll say we're 70 feet less than what we're allowed. You said 150?
for multifamily structures,
Yeah,
yes.
so we're 70
Yeah.
feet less than permitted.
Yeah. But certainly zoning doesn't always necessarily comport with the historical preservation aspect, so. And for the parking, there is no required parking in the central business district. And that has been a longstanding policy of the cities. Certainly will stand to be reevaluated as part of our comprehensive plan, which we're undergoing now, as many of our other design regulations will be reevaluated. But as it stands right now, no parking is required.
Thanks. Have any other comments? Okay,
Thank you, everyone, for your.
thanks very much. Appreciate the presentation. All right, any other business for the commission? Suzanne, does anybody need to go to city council?
I don't think for the two approvals it's necessary.
I agree. Okay. And I motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry,
All right.
could I make one other comment? I didn't
Oh,
realize
that
there
was
wasn't a public
time.
comment section at the very end.
Yes, go
It
ahead.
should be under other business.
There
perhaps.
is other business, and
Oh,
I
there
asked
is.
here, but I didn't ask out there, so
Okay.
go ahead, yeah.
Great. I just wanted to say, we recently hired a public art manager, public art and urban design manager. I wanted to make that brief introduction here. And so some of the comments that I provided tonight were generated by both me and Molly. And Molly is not only heading up the public art program, as you may have known it in the past, but it's been retooled a little bit to be looking at ways we can be incorporating public art more creatively into streetscape design, into the land development process, and also into our capital improvement projects. So Molly, do you mind just saying hello to the Historical Commission briefly?
Hi, Molly. Okay, welcome. Thank you. Thanks for interrupting. All right, if there's anything else, all right, then we will adjourn. Thank you.